Welcome all. My name is David Bowers. I'm a clinical assistant professor of mathematics education at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and a very recent graduate of Michigan State University. My research is in the area of anarchist mathematics education. This paper was written in collaboration with Brian Lawler, associate professor of mathematics education at Kennesaw State University. I apologize that he's not here with me. That's because I'm very overwhelmed with young children and a new job in a new state, and I'm being very bad at scheduling right now. It is on me. Thank you for joining me in this video about our paper, Anarchism as a Methodological Foundation in Mathematics Education, a Portrait of Resistance. Now, I'll briefly summarize a little bit of that paper here, but mostly my goal is to add some context and additional information. I'm going to elaborate on where I'm coming from, what the trajectory of this work might look like, as well as what the trajectory might look like in a broader sense for those that you might consider of like mind with myself. That is to say, those for whom reform is or has become a dirty word, those for whom that contradiction between our values and our impacts is an intolerable violence. There is, for many of us, I would say, a conflict between our ethical values and the realities of what we do. Those moments where you say to yourself, well, it's just a job. I have to do what I have to do. For many of us, and I would further specify that this is true for a growing contingent of new and emerging researchers, that contradiction is or has become an unbearable nightmare. I am, first and foremost, an activist. And in activism, it's always communities of humans and non-humans that co-determine what is to be valued, what the metrics of success might be. More specifically, I'm an anarchist activist, one for whom my freedom and my oppression is necessarily tied up in the freedom and oppression of others. I am only as free as the most marginalized among us. In short, for me, our work is not and will never be just a job, nor is it distinct or separable from my holistic identity and my collective interrelationship with others, human and non-human. This paper is an attempt, as a graduate student, to reconcile and articulate that reconciliation between who I am and what I do. So where are we at right now? The average age of empires, according to some specialists on that subject, and how fascinating is it that there are specialists on that subject? It's about 250 years. After that, they always die, often slowly and overwhelmingly because of overreaching and the search for power. The United States of 1776 will reach its 250th year in 2026. And recognizing the United States as one of the key centers of hegemonic and power of the empire in the contemporary world, what does that mean to us? Especially now, when there seem to be so many of us who are beginning to feel the empire buckle under its own weight. What comes next? What can we do in this moment of entropic risk and opportunity? How can we come together, both collectively and individually, so to speak, in order to create something better? The beginnings of my answer are to root our methodologies, our ways of being researchers, in our core and largely shared ethical values. Methodologies aren't methods, mind. They're the interrelationship between who we are, that is our epistemology, ontology, axiology, social position, and what we do. Those are our methods, mediated often by a particular focus frame or lens. Our methodology, though, is the entire interrelationship. So, where do we root our methodology? I think in recent years, they're most often rooted in particular ontological or epistemological claims. Instead, what happens if we root it in an axiological claim, and specifically an ethical claim? And Brian and I have three ethical values that we like to share because they're relatively easy to state, and most people have a broad sense of what we mean when we say them. What happens if we root a methodology in cooperation, mutual aid, and freedom from unjustified coercive hierarchy? That is, working together for the benefit of everybody, and self-determination where we understand the word self in collectivist terms as this almost spiritual interrelationship of the individual with the incomprehensible assemblage of human and non-human agents in which we are embedded. So let's build a methodology rooted in those axiological values first and foremost. Is it possible? Yes, it is. What can it look like? There are a number of things it can look like. What we articulate in this paper is one particular way it can look that is particularly meaningful to us. And then the most interesting question to me in some sense, is it practical? And what I was fascinated to see is that it's a methodology that I can use in the system as it exists, and that I could continue to use if the system fell. Many of us here are keenly observant, with sharply critical eyes. For some of us, maybe many of us, that criticality stops at the level of discourse. We notice things, we talk about them, we realize that they are problematic. Then we sigh in exasperation at our lack of ability to do anything about it. We patch up the violent machine and keep going. If you're sufficiently privileged, it feels good to do that. It feels like enough. And if you aren't, you feel gaslit. I'm in so much pain. Do you not see it too? Am I imagining it? Sit with the ethical weight you have the privileged capacity to ignore. Critical theory is necessarily an inadequate force of change when not accompanied by critical praxis. This additional step of critical praxis has presented a hurdle to many, a fact at once shocking and wholly unsurprising. Unsurprising because critical and social justice work can't be built on a foundation of oppression such as that symbolically and material reified in the norms of methods of so much mathematics education research. But shocking because a new reality lies just out of sight over the horizon. Brian and I hope that this glimpse of one such reality, one such critical praxis developed through a cohesion of theory and practice, might offer a glimpse over such a horizon. While throwing off the reins of oppression might seem at times an insurmountable challenge, we look forward in solidarity to basking under the warmth of new suns with you. Thank you.